Thank you, Joakim Røbergshagen. He's only 12 years old, and he just performed the piece Subito by Lutoslavski. He was accompanied by Ole Christian Hågenrud. Now I would like to welcome to the stage His Royal Highness Crown Prince Haakon.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back after lunch. Wasn't he great? That was fantastic, wasn't it? So, think big, start young, shape the world. That is the mission of. The mission is to explore that in this session, I guess. Last week, the Crown Princess and I, we were in California and in Silicon Valley. And we met a lot of really inspirational people. A lot of the people in Silicon Valley are very young. A lot of the energy comes from young people and people that are young-like. One of them we met is Professor Tina Silling at Stanford University, and she wrote this book called What I Wish I Knew When I Was 20, with the subtitle, A Crash Course on Making Your Place in the World. In her book, she describes how young students of Stanford solve incredibly difficult challenges, using their creativity with energy, and maybe most importantly, to challenge conventional truths. By refusing to accept the boundaries and inputs put up by well-established systems and routine thinking, most of the time by older people, they create impressive business ideas. Some of the speakers in this session will have similar stories to tell. Today, young people are making their place in the world. The possibility is there to create their own space, also to a large extent made possible by technology. But they also need support. And we will talk about that in length in this session. Our first speaker is a movement builder. He started already at the age of 8. And a few years later, at a very young age still, Jeremy Heimans founded Avaz, which today is the world's largest online political movement, with 15 million members operating in 14 languages. And today, he's also co-founder and CEO of Purpose, an online movement building organization. Jeremy is a brilliant example of a guy who has made his place in the world driven by passion, stamina, and guts, and who has taken full advantage of the technological possibilities of today. In 2011, Jeremy received the Ford Foundation's Visionaries Award, and he is named a Young Global Leader by the World Economic Forum. Jeremy, welcome to Norway. The floor is yours.
Well, thank you very much, Your Royal Highness. It's great to be here in Norway in this beautiful place. I'm going to talk to you a little bit today about building movements. And as the Crown Prince said, I've been doing that from a frighteningly young age. So the theme of the session is think big, start young, change the world. And when I was a kid, I really thought I was going to do all of those things in about 5 minutes. So I'll play you a little excerpt from me at age 12, talking about all of the things that I was planning to do.
Today we spoke to Jeremy Heimans at his Sydney home.
Well, I think we have got problems, and I think we have got monetary problems. What you could do is divert 10% of each nation's annual military spending to services of debt, the environment, and health, malnutrition, children, and all these problems, because we spend an excessive amount, an enormous amount on the military, which is completely unnecessary to spend so much, and instead we've got to spend that money on immediate problems that endanger our entire society.
So no one quite knew what to do with me, but but I did grow up with this idea that I could change the world. So the topic of this and the idea that young people actually have the capacity to start things, to do big things, I think the fact that I started young has been a really big influence on the trajectory that my life has taken. So I want to fast forward quite a way to 2005 when I'm a grown-up, a full grown-up in my 20s, and I'm equally still in a fairly bold mode, and I'm from Australia originally, and there's this man here, John Howard, who was the Prime Minister of Australia. He'd been in power for almost 10 years. His values weren't mine. And we felt like the country had been dragged back decades on issues like the environment and protection of refugees and reconciliation with Australia's Indigenous people. So we said, you know, we've got to do better. The problem was that the existing political parties, the existing political apparatus, wasn't really doing anything. So me and a friend of mine thought, you know what? Let's start a movement. Let's start a movement. Let's go around all of these political parties, all of these 20th century political institutions, and let's shake things up. So we created this thing called Get Up. We said very boldly, we are starting a movement. We launched this television ad, and the stars of the movement were my sister and my niece, as you'll see in that photograph. But actually something very important was happening. What we asked ordinary Australians to do when we launched Get Up, very simply, was we built them a very simple online tool which hadn't been built before, so that people could very directly email their senators and tell them what they cared about, and tell them that, you know what, we're not relying on the opposition political parties, we're going to hold you to account. The people are taking this into our own hands. And it was a funny thing, because when we did this, the government got so threatened that one of the key ministers got up on national television and he says, all these people, we're flooded with emails from our constituents. This is outrageous. This is spam. And we said, well, you know what? When ordinary people write to you using this newfangled technology called email, that's probably not spam, it's called democracy. So that was really the birth of Get Up and the birth of a movement. And Get Up today is the largest political organisation in Australia. It has more members than all of Australia's political parties put together. And the most important thing about Get Up is that it isn't just about people clicking or people sending emails. It's about people dressing up their dogs in Get Up t-shirts. And to me, that's the real litmus test. There's this expression in Australia, I am Get Up. And this is just a thread from a newspaper article where people were just commenting on an article. And this is how people talk about Get Up and their affiliation with it. I am Get Up. My partner, sister, mother, father. I too am Get Up. So is my wife and daughter. None of us belong to any political party, union, or Tea Party for that matter. And so what you're seeing here is this new way in which people affiliate to movements in the 21st century. They don't want to be part of these big, broken, old institutions that talk to them. They want to be part of institutions they can really grab hold of and participate in that take their own sense of agency seriously. So the next bit of the story is this. So we're trying to tackle this epic problem, which is that at the global level, you've got governments who have lots of ways they coordinate through the IMF, the World Bank, the WTO, etc. You've got corporations who, of course, these days, any large corporation is already a multinational, transnational, so they know how to coordinate globally. But people are not well coordinated globally. So if you want to get the views and values of the world's people expressed when the decisions are made that, for example, inform the financial regulations globally that led to the financial crisis, or the failure to take action globally on climate change, where are people? People are so far away. So I got together with a few friends from around the world, other social entrepreneurs, and we decided to co-found Avaz. And really that was about saying global public opinion is the new superpower. And today Avaz has 21 million members all over the world in 14 languages. And it's a really interesting experiment with this idea of transnational movement building. The idea that, you know what, I may be in Sweden or in Norway, but I care about what happens in Cameroon. If my fellow brothers and sisters are being harmed, if there's a human rights issue, if there's something that matters to all of us. So it's trying to build this sense of common humanity. So that led me 3.5 years ago to create Purpose. And we realized, having started some of these really interesting new movements that were powered by technology that made it really easy to aggregate people's power, that it would be awesome if we created a home for this, a place where we could hatch these movements around the biggest problems in the world. And that's what Purpose does every day. So we bring together this really interesting group of people. We bring together political organizers, people who are good at storytelling, because storytelling is so important to movements, people who understand business, people who understand human behavior, designers, and of course, technologists. We put them all in a room, we find the best of them in the world that we can, and we say, build movements. We find the issues, or people come to us with the issues, where we can make interventions. So we've created this concept of the movement entrepreneur. Because when I reflected back on my life and on some of the movements that I was involved in starting that ended up having a pretty big impact, we realized, well, what this really was a form of entrepreneurship. It was applying the principles of entrepreneurship to the process of starting movements. Movements are not started by the UN. They're not started by governments. They're not started by huge institutions. They're started by small groups of committed people with freedom to innovate, with the capacity to take big risks and to take the agency of ordinary people seriously. So at Purpose, we create and train and cultivate this concept of the movement entrepreneur. Digitally savvy outsiders who create new sources of power by mobilizing and aggregating the voices of many. And before I stop, I'll give you just a few examples of some movement entrepreneurs. They're all very good looking, I might add. This is Alessandra from our team. She is from Brazil. She decided to start an amazing movement called Minha Rio, which is about giving ordinary citizens of Rio access to power using technology, holding people to account. We've only been going a little over a year, and already 1 in 20 millennial-aged people are members of this. And it's not the elites. It's actually the emerging middle classes who'd never even had any real relationship with power before. They've done all sorts of amazing stuff. They've helped to pass an anti-corruption bill. They've helped to stop a big change to the environmental code. And they've done things like save schools that were being evicted to make way for Olympic changing rooms and things like that. This is Andre Banks. Andre started with me All Out, a new organization for the global fight for rights for gay, lesbian, and transgender people. This is an example of a campaign that I think will be of interest to you, because it really is our work in action. Since the Iraq War, 800 gay men, or men thought to have been gay, have been brutally murdered in Iraq. In many cases, with the tacit consent of the Interior Ministry and the police. It's a big problem. So All Out, which has now got 1.6 million members all over the world, the majority of which are actually straight, saw this problem and identified 20 men in Iraq who had already been subjected to violence and who were at high risk of being murdered if we didn't get them out of Iraq. These guys were gay, or they were thought to be gay because of the way they dressed. So a traditional foundation or institution they were trying to get funding to evacuate these guys, but the way these foundations work is they're operating on 18-month cycles, and they couldn't act fast enough. So we said to our 1.6 million members, we've got to get these guys out. And in 12 hours, we raised enough money in micro donations to get them to raise a fund to work with a local NGO on the ground to evacuate these guys in 12 hours. So then we were able to, after that, proceed with this, and now these men have resettled in different parts of the world. So that's just an example of how this work operates. You've got scale, you've got speed, and it's people-powered. And people power, I think, confers a lot of legitimacy. This is Matt Palevsky, who's starting a very interesting new movement in America, and I know it's a pretty tough nut to crack, which is to stop the corrupting influence of money in American politics. I'll let you know when we have that sorted out. And this is Al Noor, who started a fascinating new movement, which I urge you guys to look up, called The Rules, therules.org, which is a new movement around global inequality, which says, you know what, rather than have Bob Geldof sing on his guitar about these voiceless Africans, how about we organize the Africans? How about we let Africans organize on behalf of their own interests and talk about the things that they really care about. And when you ask people in Africa and in other parts of what we call the majority world what they care about, they won't actually talk to you about foreign aid. They'll talk to you about the things that are really unfair in the global system, like agricultural subsidies in Europe and the US, like the tax havens, which means that money that should be in the coffers of these governments, of course, is in the coffers of places like Bermuda. And finally, just to give you a little bit of theory, I want to explain the kind of methodology of what we do. And so we have this concept called the commitment curve. And the commitment curve is about making it really easy for people to participate by lowering the barrier to entry. So you don't have to make people pay dues up front. They don't have to get a card in the mail. And in the 21st century, that's not how people want to affiliate. Young people are much more fluid in their affiliations. They don't want a card in their wallet. So the methodology is to make it easy to get people involved, make it easy to join, find a simple action to bring people in, build a big funnel, and then to systematically move people up a curve so that you build their commitment over time. You basically deploy this principle of the endowment effect, which means that once you've done something, you've committed to something, you're much more likely to take the second step. And so that's part of the methodology that has led to moving people from online to offline and taking people from one-time activists to much more deeply committed ones. So thanks very much, and I look forward to the panel discussion. Thanks very much. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeremy. Wonderful. Thank you, Jeremy. Wonderful to have you here. Really inspirational talk. And we're looking forward to picking your brain a little bit more after the next speaker. In 2001, the Norwegian entrepreneur Jørn Lyseggen founded Meltwater with only $15,000 and at the age of 33. Today, Meltwater is a global leader in social media analysis. And coming from Trysil, a small village in Norway, he has worked his way through quite a few barriers to get to where he is today. We're happy to have you with us here today, Jørn. I also wanted to mention that he also started Meltwater Entrepreneurial School of Technology, which operates in Ghana to also help new entrepreneurship and to foster new entrepreneurship in Africa. So thank you very much, Jørn, for coming. The floor is yours.
Thank you. Yes, so coming after Jeremy, I was thinking about when I was 8. I don't remember exactly what I did. I was probably skiing around in Trysil. I'm actually an entrepreneur, but differently from Jeremy, I've been pretty clueless as to what exactly I wanted to do up through the years. I always admire those that, knew exactly what they were going to do by the time they were 18, 30, and so on. I never really had an idea. So most of the things I've done has truly been very accidental. But I ended up as an entrepreneur because I fell in love with internet. When the internet came, I became passionately excited about the internet. This was at a time when you met other people with email addresses. I got really excited because we had something in common. You have an email address too, that's fantastic. How do you use it, and so on. So that's really how it started. Meltwater is my 4th startup. And previously I'd done 2 trades and I also listed a company on the Swedish Stock Exchange. And I've been asked by Kronprins Haakon here today to tell a little bit about the journey coming from Norway and out in the big world. And I will also talk a little bit about our school in Africa. So this is how it started, very humbly. Our address was actually Shack 15, Skur 15, at Tjuvholmen. That was at the time when Tjuvholmen was a lot less glamorous as it is today. It was a dump. It was something that's going to be demolished, and for that reason, nobody wanted to be there. And that lent itself really well to me, because then I could actually get free office space, which is really good if you're a scrappy startup. So we started with 100,000 Norwegian kroner, and I think most of you can understand why maybe 100,000. That's what you need to start a company, right? So that's how we started. from a little bit shaky start in the initial first couple of years, we suddenly were able to get some traction, and we got good momentum in Norway. And then we decided to move on to expand the rest of the world. And as all good Norwegian companies do, we climbed over the mountain to Sweden and started our Swedish office. And a big belief in Meltwater has always been the capacity of young people and the capacity of young people to do great things. And one of the most important things that we did in Sweden was meeting and finding a person called Niklas de Beers. So he's the tall guy there, and he stumbled straight out of KTH, so he's an engineer by training, and he's now part of the management team and has been instrumental in building the company and expanding across the different countries we currently are present. The next office out was London, and in Norway and Sweden we got good traction. So we were pretty confident and felt very excited about the success we experienced in Norway. When we came to the UK, we were really beaten up. We realized that it was different species. They speak differently, they have different expectations, they wear pink shirts for all the different things that they do. They're very different. So it took us a good year before we were able to figure that out. The person in the middle there, let me see, can I point here? Yeah, the person in the middle there with a big smile, he is a Norwegian. He is sitting in Blomsterdalen outside of Flesland. And he did the same thing as Niklas. He stumbled into the company straight from Handelshøyskolen and is now part of our management team. And he was also named one of the top 10 young leadership talent here in Norway a couple of years back. And there's another person there in the back as well. His name is Chris Register. He was instrumental in expanding our operation into Asia. So I remember when he celebrated his 24th birthday. That was here in Oslo. So we had beers and celebration at Onkel Donau, for those of you who have been there. And the next day he jumped on a plane and he went off to Hong Kong to set up the Hong Kong office. So, and the London office has been very instrumental in building leaders and executives to different parts of the world. So expanded into Africa, to Australia, to Hong Kong, as we mentioned, as well as North America. Berlin, that is the toughest market. If it was tough in UK, Germany was by far the toughest market we ever entered. I'm not really sure why, but it has been extremely challenging. It was basically 2 years of humiliation and beating. But one of the exciting things about our German development was that one guy, do you see the guy with the yellow tie? So he was part of the team that set up the German operation. He sits here in the audience. His name is Fredrik Sydnes. So he later moved on to help me start and build the school in Africa. Based on experiences he aggregated in, among others, in Berlin, in Germany. Silicon Valley was really the big jump for us. So we were basically 4 Scandinavians that made a pact. We sold everything we owned, houses, cars, etc., and packed what we had left in 2 suitcases, jumped on a plane, and landed in Silicon Valley, the mecca of everything IT, everything startup. And in many ways, you can. When I say that, a lot of people talk about, oh, wow, how could you sell everything? But that was actually not the most risky thing that we did. Because those 4 people, including myself, they were essentially the management team of the company. So what happens with the company if you take the management team, put them on a plane, and send them to the other side of the world? Well, in our case, the company did better than ever. Get the management to the side, a new talent comes up. And I think that in many ways is a testament to the young talent, the capacity of young talent, and what they can accomplish once they get the chance and the support. So here's our Hong Kong office, the summer of 2006. You see Chris Register, the guy at the back. He was so young, so that a lot of the managers in Meltwater we bring to different leadership programs outside of Meltwater as well. We have more than 200 people that we've been running through programs at Oxford University, among others. And one of the programs we wanted Chris to take part in, the admission office basically said no. for one reason only, and that was his age. And then I talked with the admission officer, said, you know, this guy, don't underestimate this guy. The only thing he has against himself is the age. So after back and forth, you know, they accepted him, and he turned out to be one of the top people in the class, you know, outperforming people who were 10 or 20 years older than him. And they were so excited about him, so they actually put him on the website of Oxford University, promoting the program. I think he's still there, actually, so you can find him on the websites. And Meltwater has many offices, and one of the areas that I learned a lot about that I didn't know much about prior to starting Meltwater was the Middle East, and here's a picture from Abu Dhabi. And one of the things that maybe I'll learn is that people are people everywhere. You know, the thing that I'm more surprised about is how similar people are than how different people are. So people talk about want to do business here and there, and every country have their own expectations and so on. And certainly that is the case. But still, I think that it's more surprising how similar people are. People want to develop themselves. People want to be challenged. People want to take care of their kids and their family. It's exactly the same everywhere. Yeah, we don't have an office in Maldives. I was thinking maybe I should go there and check it out. But this email, this photo I got in my inbox in December of 2010. And then I was really moved. Because those two people in the picture, they're colleagues from our Singapore office. So as part of their Christmas vacation, they went back to where they came from, which was the Maldives. And they finished up the last thing before they were eating, I don't know if they were eating ribbe and all that good stuff, but whatever they were eating for Christmas there. And they sent a photo and I sent a greeting to the rest of the company. And I was really moved because at that time I started to stop and think about, wow, we have really become a global company. Maldives is very far from Shack 15, Tjuvholmen, and then it really dawned on me. Yeah, so Meltwater has grown considerably, so we are approaching 800-900 million Norwegian kroner this year. We have been so fortunate to work with some of the top brands across the world. So if you mention 100 brands, I would be surprised if not 80 of those are clients of Meltwater. I don't know if you recognize the emblem at the top left. That's actually the Vatican. So I usually say that Meltwater's clients, well, that's everything from the Pope in Rome to Coca-Cola. So it's a pretty broad spectrum. So this is where we are currently. We have more than 50 offices across the world. We have 20,000 corporate clients. We have 900 employees. We have clients from 90 countries. And we have a total of 50 offices. And Meltwater has become the global leader in online media intelligence, basically online news and social media. I think the core of what we have done has really been built on our values. I'm very passionate about the values and cultures. It's something I were completely oblivious to as an engineer. I really didn't relate to that at all. But become a practitioner in terms of management and building companies, I realized that is by far the most important thing for building successful teams, successful organizations, and successful companies. And our values are very rooted in Norwegian sunn fornuft, common sense. Our values is moro, enere, respect, and mer as an aspiration for continuous improvement. So wherever you go in the world, you hear Americans say moro, enere, respect, and then the Chinese try to say it, and I'm not even going to try to explain how they pronounce it. But a core of the success of what we have accomplished in Meltwater is really linked to the belief in capacity of people. And back in 2001, we decided that we want to really deploy the expertise that we had developed in the for-profit sector into the non-profit sector. So then we took our values to the next level. So mer became mest. So you have to be Scandinavian to kind of understand the fun of our values. But mest was then the next stage, and then we figured out what does that mean, and then we came up with the name Meltwater Entrepreneurial School of Technology. So that's how that came about. That is the school that we started in 2008. It is a program for very young and very talented young Africans. And what we help them with is educating them and training them so that they can one day become entrepreneurs themselves. So what we are supporting is tech startups. It's a 2-year program where you train in everything from programming to building software to how to write a business plan and how to pitch to investors and so on. And every year we graduate a bunch of students that are then injected into the local community, people that have high expertise and competence. One of the problems we have now is that people are headhunted before they finish the program. But these people are trained as entrepreneurs. And they contribute, whether they start a company or not, they contribute in a very positive way in the local society. And we think that they share concentration and entrepreneurially trained people locally in Ghana over time will be a very positive thing. For the top students, they can actually get funding. So we have an incubator associated with the school, and currently there are 11 companies in that incubator created by graduates of our school. So if you have a good idea, then you can pitch. And basically the final examination of the 2 years is a 20-minute investor pitch. And if that investment pitch is good, then you can be rewarded everything from $30,000 to $200,000 in funding. And then you get to start your company. It gives you about a year or 2 in runtime, and then it's really up to you. So you get then supported by local business consultant and local staff. And we also have a satellite office in Silicon Valley to help them bridge to all the entrepreneurial things, entrepreneurial things that happen there in terms of advisors, mentors, and investors. So I'm going to, at the end, finish off with giving a little background on 3 of our graduates that we're very proud of. One of them is Anna Musi. She was 25, and I remember her very vividly when she was recruited. She was so shy. And she was so shy that it was almost hard to actually conduct a proper interview. It was very little eye contact. And she was so soft-spoken, so it was really hard to hear what she's saying, so you had to kind of lean in to understand what's happening. But her aptitude test was through the roof. It was the best aptitude test we have ever seen. So we said, we have to bring this one on board. We have to bring her into the program. And she grew from being this very shy person to a very capable and a very confident person. So she became the CEO of one of the companies that we funded. And 1 year after, she boarded a plane for the first time in her life, was dropped in the madness of Silicon Valley, walked on a stage and was pitching her business idea in competition with some of the top tech startups in Silicon Valley, and in front of 1,000 people. And I think I was more nervous than her when she was up on the stage. And you can tell that she was a little nervous when she started. But then she just delivered. She delivered incredibly well. And not only that, because there was a panel of judges that started to poke hole in her business idea, and she was fending them off. Every objection that came was fended off. She has now a company in Africa that is cash flow positive, is profitable, and is doing really well. And she has become a local hero in the community in Ghana, representing entrepreneurship, representing what young female leaders can accomplish. And she has also been selected into a very prestigious leadership program, a mentor program, that was arranged by Forbes magazine and the United States Department. So the top Fortune 50 most powerful women in the US has then been designated as mentors. And there are 35 people across the world that has been selected for this program. And Anne is actually one of them. So we met her in Silicon Valley now. And the way she has grown, representing not only MES, but Ghana and the whole continent of Africa, was really, really moving. The next one is Robert Lamptey. He is a geek chic guy. He's a computer science guy by training, but he's a very charismatic person. He's very communicative and able to deliver and convey really, really effectively. Same story as Anne, on a plane to Silicon Valley, and he was, as the first African company, enrolled into TechCrunch Disrupt. And for those of you that don't know what that is a very, very prestigious and selective program in San Francisco. And he came there, pitched in front of 1,000 people again, and against all odds, SEIA, the company he founded, was named one of the top 7 companies in that entire conference, which was incredibly impressive. And after that, he was treated like a hero. He got to meet Google, Facebook, Skype, and all the different who's who of Silicon Valley. The last person I want to introduce is David Osai. He is the founder and CEO of Dropify. And some of you may have heard about Global Entrepreneurship Week. It's an event that is organized across the world. So it's local winners. And they were the winner in Ghana. And then they competed with all the winners across the world. And there must be hundreds and hundreds of these winners. And remarkably, his company was actually named the most promising company globally and won the grand prize. And they flew him to Rio de Janeiro in Brazil. And this is a picture of him receiving the award for the best startup in the world of 2012. With that, I'd like to thank you for the attention. I'd like to wish all of you the best of luck. If any one of you have big dreams, I suggest you go out and make it happen. Best of luck. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jørn. Very impressive what you've been able to do. We are now going to go over to the panel discussion. So I would like to invite the 2 last panelists to come out here on stage and join us. Hi. Jørn, you can help out with the water. Huh?
Absolutely.
Perfect. Okay. Young people, they are innovative and they are part of the solution to the problems that the world faces. And they operate in a way that is not constrained as much and hampered by conventional truths. So how can society encourage? How can we all encourage and support youth to take early action? That is the main theme of this panel. So I would like to go over to you, Karl Hersvik. You are the Senior Vice President of Statoil's Research and Development Division. And obviously, Statoil, as a more established business, it's important to Statoil that to attract the best talents and to foster the best talents. So I wanted to ask you to maybe say a few words about yourself and maybe say a few words also about how you attract talent and how you foster talent.
Sure, thank you. Well, I'm not young like some of you. I'm not an entrepreneur, although I do try. I didn't succeed as well as Jørn here. I have a 13-year-old who thinks it's really fitting that his father is in the oil and gas business because I usually get the comment that I'm fastly becoming a fossil. So that's me. But what I do, I'm deeply passionate about talent. I'm deeply passionate about innovation. And I'm really kind of involved in making significant changes. And I think that grand corporations actually do have a place in this. My organization in Rome, we're around 800 people. We spend around $600 million of our own money and probably an additional $400 million out of joint venture funds type of money. So around $1,000 billion. So things happen when we start moving, and we're really trying to solve significant challenges. I think one of the reasons that I'm so occupied with talent and so occupied with innovation is the pace of the change in the world, right? And I think what Jørn's just pointed to is amazing. But in my world, we make decisions in a 20-year horizon. 20-year horizon. We actually, every day, we make a decision, take a gamble on what the world will look like in 20 years. And I tried to look back and what the world looked like when I was 20, which means I'm 40 now. And I had no idea. I did not even have the imagination to imagine what the world would become today. That means to me that we need to have agility. We need to have mobility, we need to have flexibility, and we need to have a huge, huge toolkit. We have something in Statoil that we call Heroes of Tomorrow, which is our way of supporting young talents in Norway and internationally. I think many companies are promoting themselves by known faces and established profiles. We've chosen a different path. So we spend around 55, 60 million Norwegian a year on promoting young talent in art, in sports, which is very important to many Norwegians, particularly skiing, and also in science and education. And I just met with a program called Teach First, which I think is truly amazing. These are probably the best candidates out of Norwegian and international schools in Norway. And they elect to go into teaching in challenging primary and secondary schools in mathematics and natural science, rather than going to McKinsey or to other Statoil for that matter, for highly paid and highly profiled jobs. That takes commitment, that takes dedication, and to see the engagement, the enthusiasm, and to be quite honest, the leadership it takes is deeply amazing. And half of these actually stay on as teachers after they're done with the program. And I met one young girl teaching at a very challenging class. And there's a grade in Norway, and it's going from 1 to 6. And her class was 16 people. They were all 16-year-old males. And they had an average of 1.4. That was a really challenging environment, right? So she was writing on the blackboard, and they were throwing sponges and yogurt containers and stuff. And this is a 24-year-old girl. She nearly breaks down, but she has the stamina. She stays in there. She really stays in there. 1 year later, and these boys have an average of 3.2, which is truly amazing. I mean, imagine that. Imagine the leadership. And I must admit that one of the things that really make me proud is to be a part of that. And then that's a movement, in a sense. If we could make Teach First a truly global movement, then that's a challenge to you, Jeremy. To get a lot of the young, best talents to actually go into public schools and make a difference. I'm in for that.
Thank you very much, Karl. Thank you for enlightening us on how you think about talent and how to foster it. We also have Hübert with us, who is studying medicine at the present moment. She's a remarkable young woman. At the age of 19, she was traveling in Kenya, and she found that they needed several things in the villages that she visited, amongst other water wells. She decided to do something about it and started Aid in Action at the age of 19. She has now also started Morembo, and she's doing all of this in addition to studying medicine, has really made an impact on the villages that she visited. Anna-Louise, maybe you could say a few words also about your story.
Yes, as you said, thank you. I started when I was only 19 years old, and I went down there on backpacking all by myself in Africa. I came to Gumbulu, a village in Kenya, and I realized that children didn't have food to eat. So I was talking to the principal, and he kind of gave the task to me to do something about it. So what did I do? I called my mom. Of course, what can you do when you're 19 years old? You don't have $1 million cash in your pocket. So, and my mom, she had told me that, Anna, when you travel around the globe, you should not start helping poor people all over, because, you know, they will just beg for more and more, and you will never get rid of those guys. But when I called, she said, okay, I'll send you 2,000 Norwegian kroners. And that was enough to feed 360 kids for 2 weeks. So that's how I started, and these projects were growing and growing. So one of the next projects was to make the first borehole, or that's a drilling well, and that one was a bit more expensive than just to feed a child every day, which was 50 øre, half a Norwegian kroner. And the borehole cost 160,000 Norwegian kroners. That's about 26,000 US dollars. And I didn't know what to do. So first of all, I tried to apply all these foundations we have in Norway in Legatonboka to get some endowments, but they all refused my application. Then I called and emailed all the big NGOs we have in Norway and also internationally, and I was telling them about Gumbulu and that I wanted to help them with the borehole, because these people spend 6 hours every day to get clean water to drink. However, they also refused. They told me we have enough to do with what we are already doing, so we can't help you. Then I tried to Google and to see who are the richest people in Norway. So all of these Thun and Hagen and all of them, they got an email from me where I was explaining about Gumbulu and that they needed water. However, the only one who replied was the secretary of Selina Middelfart, and she told me they're already supporting UNICEF. So we wish you good luck. So finally, 10 days before I went to Gumbulu to make this borehole and I didn't have any cash, I prayed to God and I told him, now you have to hurry up because I really want to give these children of yours some water to drink. And then some young people were just calling me 2 hours later than that, and they told me we were going to fundraise here. They were in Levanger, middle of Norway, and they fundraised 40,000 kroners. And the next day I got another email and from one of these foundations, and they suddenly gave me some cash, and I used Facebook to get the rest of what we needed. So then we made the borehole. Of course, I didn't have any clue of making boreholes. Do you have any clue of that? No? Have you made one? You do. And they're much deeper. That's very good. But, I'm really sad that we didn't have some of your engineers coming into my classroom teaching us to do that, because when I was done with high school, I didn't know how to make boreholes, but now I do. I have made 2 boreholes so far. And they're 160 meters deep and give a lot of water to 20,000 people now. And later on, I started other projects, and it was kind of challenging because I didn't have so much cash, and that's typically for young people. So once I started a project with the planting of trees, and I really wanted these guys in Gumbulu to start planting papaya trees because it could give them so much cash. But I didn't have a lot of cash. So I got an idea about starting a planting competition. And I told 100 ladies, who of you can plant most trees in half a year? And the best one of you will get a bull, number 2 will get a cow, and number 3 will get a bicycle. And each and every one of you who joins this competition will get a chicken. And in half a year, they actually planted 10,000 trees. And I paid 8,000 kroners for a bull and a cow and a bicycle, and I employed 3 people for half a year, and I paid for 10,000 plastic bags for these plants and a lot of other things for 8,000 Norwegian kroners. So that's like how I started, and it has been developing since then with many different projects, and we're trying to think business-minded all the time when we start new projects. We think, how can this project be financed by income generated down in Kenya? So actually, Aid in Action has also become kind of a movement, since we have been talking about movements here. right now we are making it like a franchise where other young people can join in and start their own project. So 2 weeks ago, one of my friends, he started a project in the Solomon Islands. He fundraised for 60,000 Norwegian kroners in just 10 days in Norway by using Facebook only. Some people in Harvard have started a project with some people in Uganda. Some people married 1 year ago and they started their own home for orphan kids in Kenya through Aid in Action, and that's how we are changing the world. Yeah.
Wonderful. This is why Anna has become a global shaper with the World Economic Forum. As you can imagine, that was an easy pick. Amongst all the other things she's doing, she's also writing a book right now, which is about to launch in September, right?
Yes.
Be published in September, so you can all read more about the story there. So that's. But I just wanted to ask you one question. Why was it that you decided to do it all by yourself at 19 instead of working through an established organization that already had the network, already had people on the ground?
That's what I wanted to do, but they just told me that they were already doing whatever they were doing. And I had some specific people that I wanted to help, and I couldn't ask Kirkens Nødhjelp or Redd Barna, Save the Children, or UNICEF to come into my village. I tried, but they didn't want to come. So that's how I had to just start all by myself. But now we are trying to answer that challenge with making this franchise with Aid in Action, so other people that want to do something actually can get the opportunity to do it, and we will facilitate with websites and all these things, because like I'm studying medicine, I don't know how to make a website, you know? Mm.
Yeah. Wonderful, thank you. I just wanted to maybe bridge with Jeremy here on that question, because a lot of the established organizations that are out there already can also do some good, I guess. So where do you, how do you combine the enthusiasm of young people that want to start something new and maybe channeling it also through established organizations? Do you think that's a good idea, or do you think everyone should start it by themselves?
I think there's a role for the creation of new organizations and new sources of power, and helping existing organizations kind of modernize, and so at Purpose we try to do both. I think one of the key, and I also think, by the way, that some established organizations need to send themselves out of business. One of the things that you don't get as much in the non-profit sector as you do in the for-profit sector is non-profits need to say sometimes, you know, maybe we've had 20 years of good work, but maybe we're out of ideas, and maybe we need to make room for new ideas. So I think that on the one hand, you need established organizations to still recognize when they're no longer innovating. And on the other hand, I think that not everybody can be an entrepreneur, and not everybody should be an entrepreneur, so that, you know, something like what you've created, other people should join what you're doing now that it's really picking up a head of steam, rather than have 10 other people try to do what you're doing. Because otherwise, nothing will get to scale. So when things start to catch on, as your initiative is, when it starts to self-organize with the franchise model, that's exactly the moment where we need other people who are talented to join your efforts, and not just to have this kind of cult of everybody needs to be an entrepreneur. Like, I think that entrepreneurs are kind of unique, and hearing your description of like, yeah, you're there, you see a problem, you're like, I want to solve this problem. Most people don't approach things that way. Most people would see the problem and then watch TV. Yeah. So you know.
I'll call mom.
So that's the trick.
Thank you. We also had planned on having Chelsea Clinton as a panelist. She wasn't able to make it, unfortunately, but she really wanted to be here, so she made a video for us with a message. So should we watch that?
Hello, I'm so excited to send my greetings to you, the attendees of the Partnership for Change Empowering Youth Conference. I just returned from the annual Clinton Global Initiative University meeting, or CGIU, which is similarly designed to empower our youth attendees. CGIU is an annual meeting where students, youth organizations, and adults who are advocates, who run non-governmental organizations, work in governments and in the private sector, all come together to brainstorm and develop real solutions to pressing challenges on campuses and in communities and countries across the world. This year, we had over 1,100 students from all over the globe join us in St. Louis. Students came to CGIU because CGIU is more than an event. It is a growing community of young leaders who don't just discuss global challenges. They take real concrete steps towards solving them. Every student who comes to CGIU makes what we call a commitment to action. Really, they develop a business plan on how they'll work to change the world. I know this is an important distinction to those of you in Norway. It is an important distinction also for me and all of us at the Clinton Foundation. The principle behind CGIU and of the Empowering Youth Conference is one I believe in deeply, that young people, just as much as anyone, and maybe even more than anyone, have vital contributions to make to our world and our shared future. Youth voices deserve to be heard because young people have something to say. For all of you at the Empowering Youth Conference, that statement might seem uncontroversial, even obvious. But for plenty of young people around the world, it isn't obvious at all. They look at the complexity of the challenges we face, from poverty to infectious diseases, to war, to climate change, and they ask, where would I even start? How could I do anything to have an impact? They may even look in the mirror and think, that isn't what a leader or an activist, an inventor, or an entrepreneur looks like. People become those things when they're older, more knowledgeable, more credible. I'm none of that yet. Sometimes, unfortunately, adults in their lives tell them the same thing. Those thoughts, those judgments, may be somewhat understandable, but they're completely wrong. And I know that all of you at the Empowering Youth Conference will help discredit those judgments, those misapprehensions, through the work you're already doing and the work you will do to empower young people. I know that each of you will help encourage, and yes, empower, young people to engage meaningfully in making the world a better, safer, more equitable, and more sustainable place. Because getting involved in the work of the world, finding ways to solve problems and help make life better for people, whether they live next door or on another continent, is deeply rewarding and a lot of fun. And people deserve to discover that early, when they're young, so they can fit as much of it into their lives as possible. It's also important because the world can't afford to wait for young people across the world. Young people can do things that are hard for older people to do. They ask questions that often go unasked because they seem so simple, but that desperately need asking, like, why can't this be done differently? They're digital, even mobile natives. And that digital and mobile fluency enables them to think about problems differently, to come up with different solutions while working with one another in different ways that often would feel not natural or even uncomfortable to people who are just a little older. They're also generally more optimistic and hopeful, and despite some misconceptions to the contrary, not afraid of hard work. Right now, the world needs bold questioning, creativity, optimism, and a lot of sweat. We need each and every one of you to empower young people in Norway and across the world. I can't wait to see what a difference they will make. Thank you again, and enjoy the rest of your conference.
So Chelsea Clinton is the founder of Clinton Global Initiative University. And she said that right now the world needs bold questions, creativity, optimism, and a lot of sweat. Jørn, when you started out and you started developing your business, what support was the most important to you? Because no one makes it in a vacuum. Everyone who are successful gets support from people around. So what would you say?
I would actually say that some of the people that we brought on board has been invaluable support for me, both as a friendship, but also from a professional perspective. So my learning was that it doesn't matter how young and inexperienced people are, and they can contribute with so much context, and they can contribute in so many remarkable ways regardless. So, you know, in previous lives I had boards with lots of very experienced people supporting me, but I think that the people I hired, I learned more from them than I've been learning from board members and seniors in my previous lives.
Yeah, great. We are looking at how young people can be supported in various ways. But obviously it's also possible to reach out and find support yourself through crowdsourcing, for instance. How, Anna, did you use that methodology?
I've been using Facebook, and I'm using Facebook every day. It's easy to write what you have been eating for dinner and if you have been doing some exercise, but I actually use Facebook to tell stories about what is happening in Gumbulu and in all the 10 other villages where we are at, plus other projects around the globe. And the good thing about social media is that you can make everything much more visible. So even though I'm here in Oslo studying medicine, I can post pictures of what happened today or yesterday in Gumbulu. Like this weekend, I celebrated my 24th birthday. The children in the center, so then we posted a photo from that. They had never been eating cake before, that's why we have made this a tradition. And or when people donate money, we always ask first, we have a really specific project. We want to make a new center for orphan kids, or we want to plant 10,000 trees, or whatever we want to do. And it's very clear for people, okay, we're actually donating to this. And that makes people give. And secondly, and even better, is that when this new greenhouse is there, or this school has got a way to produce their own food or whatever it is, we can show it to the people who actually donated and see, look at the tomatoes, they're actually growing. Here, now the onions are selling at 4 onions goes for the same as 1 day's salary in Gumbulu, and we can show it to the people who give cash. So it has been really great to use Facebook and Twitter, and I'm also blogging about this. Yeah.
Jeremy, would you like to expand on that, build on that?
Yeah, look, I mean, the way I like to think about it is you use whatever tools you have, right? So when I was a child activist, I used the fax. And we would fax on the eve of the first Gulf War in 1991. We inundated James Baker and Tariq Aziz, who were meeting to negotiate before the war started, with faxes. Now, not as efficient as Facebook. Doesn't have quite the ability to have scale, but I mean, I think the key thing is you have to meet people where they are technologically. There's a really interesting tool that we've developed called CrowdRing for organizing, helping to organize people in countries where people are not on email. So in India, there's an anti-corruption activist called Anna Hazare. And he asked people to support his anti-corruption campaign by leaving him a missed call. Because in India, people leave each other missed calls as a way of getting information to each other without incurring any phone charges. So if I'm late for a meeting, I'll leave you a missed call and say, there's a missed call, and you'll know that it means that you're late. And so Anna Hazare asked for this. He gets 35 million missed calls.
In Kenya as well.
Yeah, exactly. So we said, okay, this is big, because this is how, in a place like India, you're going to get people to sign on to something by leaving a missed call. So we built this tool called CrowdRing, so now anyone anywhere can create a missed calls campaign, and then all the missed calls, you know, you get a database that you can build so that you can then re-engage the people who left you a missed call and start a movement that way. So that's very low tech. This is first generation phones. This is not even smartphones, but that's how you organize people. So I think Anna is just being her crafty self, looking for the best tools available for the audiences that she's trying to organize.
We're probably living in a very privileged time, right? Because this is recent things that took place. So today you can actually communicate extremely efficient. You started with fax, right? I mean, you are still a young man, and that shows how quickly the development has gone. And you can find people with your exact same interest, whether your interest is very narrow, or if your interest is specifically to some people in a special village. And then you can not only communicate, but you can mobilize people. And that's what you have done successfully. And of course, you with your movements as well. And I think that's why I love internet. That's why I love technology. This is what internet is all about.
The internet has been very good to you.
Indeed.
Karl, I wanted to ask you maybe a broad question, what you see as the major challenge the next 20 years from sort of a business perspective, and maybe also in answering that you could say something about how getting enough talents and getting enough young people to be interested in science, so that you actually get the talents that you need.
And I should spend around 4.5 hours to that.
2 minutes.
2 hours. I actually think that this is a really broad question. I think from a business perspective, change is probably the biggest challenge for everybody. Pace of change, pace of structural change, energy markets, growth, just in Africa, for example, if you take Tanzania as a good example, right? The GDP of Tanzania last year was around 23 billion US dollars. And now they found gas, huge amounts of gas, and they want to do something called LNG, which is liquefied natural gas, and sell it to Asia. One of those investments, just one of those, and they're probably going to be in the range of 5 to 10 in the first wave, is between 25 and 30 billion US dollars, right? So it's the same amount as the entire GDP. Imagine that amount of change in that nation alone. And if you've been there, on the coast where the gas is, there's nothing. There's not electricity, there's no water, there's no infrastructure whatsoever. So that is profound change. And then, of course, there are markets changing, and you got to move to Asia. There are around 300 million new consumers in Africa coming on stream. I think what's happened to the communication with the internet is going to happen to the economy with all these new nations rising up. But I think the good part about it is it gives rise to a lot of new talent. There's a lot of new people now coming up, and just look at us, with very, very different mindset. And for people like me who are quickly becoming fossils, it's difficult to kind of catch on and stay on. And then I think from a business perspective, there's also how do we integrate with the societies? We're changing as corporations. We usually work for shareholders, and then we're moving much more towards stakeholders. And the value perspective is also changing. So I think if I'm going to say one word, it'll be change in a very, very profound way. And it's going to happen in just a decade from now.
Sometimes I think there's sort of two discussions going on in parallel. One is sort of this motivational discussion or message that we convey, kind of like here at this conference, like, you know, start young and grow big and dream big dreams, and never ever compromise. And we've seen many motivational speakers talk about this, and that's great. I tend to really like that type of argument, and I'm sort of going with that. But then I go to this other meeting or panel or whatever. I was at one in the World Economic Forum not too long ago, where they were looking at society. So what does society need now and in 10 years? And what type of competency? And usually the answer is more engineers. And there's sort of this discussion going on how can we get enough engineers for the future in academia and in business, and also among some politicians. Now, is there a disconnect between these two, the aspirational and sort of the more fact-based, or what should you call it? Reality-based or whatever?
I don't actually think so.
No?
And I tend to argue that, well, we need more engineers, but we need passionate engineers. We need engineers with a purpose. We don't need engineers who are just engineers because they somehow were convinced to become engineers. There's a huge discussion around in Norway whether we should kind of just focus on engineering and forget about the rest. I think that would be a huge mistake. And I think there is the bridge. The bridge is the passion. And when I go out and talk to students, and I do that a lot all the time, I say, follow your heart. Do what you're passionate about, because what you're passionate about is what you're putting your energy into and your heart into. And when you're putting your heart into it, you are probably going to succeed.
But if people are choosing out of their passion, wouldn't we have a lot of designers, of journalists and social sciences, scientists like myself, that would that are following their dream, and then we'll have there's no disconnect there whatsoever?
I don't really think so.
Good.
What I think
hope
what I think is the disconnect is that there is a perception that science is difficult, and that because it's difficult, it's not worth pursuing. And I meet that a lot when I'm talking to particularly youngsters. But it's a myth, right?
Yeah, like in Aid in Action, we have had so many people joining us who are engineers, or like one in my team, he's one of the best programmers in Norway, and he is responsible for our websites. And of course, he's studying and doing his job and everything in computer science, but at his spare time, he can do something he thinks is really meaningful as well. And he actually is changing the world by doing what he's good at doing. So that's a thing we need to remember as well. Yeah.
Well, I'd like to go back to what you talked about, passion and what we need. And you said there was no disconnect, and I like to agree with you. But I also think that there's an element of young people not really knowing what they want to do. At least I have experience about that myself. I really didn't know what I wanted to do. And I think, to a large extent, I also think, as parents, as teachers, as a society, we can also encourage and stimulate to an interest. I have two daughters, two girls. They're 12 and 16. And what I told them is that they can be anything they want in their life. They can be a teacher, they can be a dancer, they can be a musician. There's only one requirement I have, and that is that they take a computer science degree. And the way I stimulate to do that is that I just feed them an iPhone, an iPad, and they get excited about these beautiful devices. And I talk about, how there are engineers writing these apps, and they're dreaming up ideas and how they fulfill their dreams and aspirations. So they haven't chosen major yet, but I'm hopeful that they're actually becoming computer science.
I mean, look, there's definitely been a cultural shift. There was a time in which engineers struggled to get dates. And now, like in Silicon Valley, if you're a socially awkward geek, but who has a startup, there are bevies of women around these men.
The coolest thing.
So this has definitely shifted culturally. It's sort of a disturbing kind of just sort of retreat from evolution. All the things that
I wouldn't say it's disturbing.
No, I'm kidding.
It's a good thing.
But actually, let me put another trend to people. I think it's very important that we have well-trained engineers. But some of the most interesting startups now in the Valley and elsewhere are actually led by creatives. So, designers, creatives make great startup founders. A good example is the company Airbnb. It's a company we're working with right now. I don't know if anyone knows about this, but they're sort of really breaking open the hotels business. So they're allowing people to make their homes into hotels, effectively. And it's hugely disruptive, and it's growing at an incredible rate. Sort of billions of dollars of revenue and all of that kind of stuff. And it was founded by designers who had, from the Rhode Island School of Design, who had a really strong interest in what the user wanted, the user experience, and they had a strong aesthetic sensibility. And in our work too, in our movement building, you can't tell a good story without a strong aesthetic sensibility. At the office at Purpose, I'm known as the font Nazi, because I care so much about the fonts, because all of those things communicate enormously. So I don't think we just need people who are technical, we also need people who are creative, and the real trick is to put them in a room together and have them make some magic.
Karl?
I think this is, I agree completely, creatives. I met a bunch of musicians, classical musicians, and they're also doing the majors. And so I'm a mathematician, so I told them that I was a mathematician. And then for jokes, I asked, who else is a mathematician? Thinking there'll probably be absolutely none, and then I can crack a joke. And to my big amazement, there was about 60% putting up their hand.
Musicians and mathematicians.
Yeah. So there is something that allows you to pursue double interest now. And this black and white stereotype that we used to have, the geeks in San Francisco, I think they're fading. And I think the link is what's creating value. Creatives are amazing, but you need science to make sure it actually works on the ground. So this link is probably what I'm seeing when I'm talking about innovation in conferences and what we're getting in from ideas. Is this link between the creative mindsets, which have the crazy ideas, and the engineers actually connecting the wheels and making it happen. It's much more pronounced these days.
Anna, if you were to give an advice to a young person that has a big dream and wants to start something, what would it be?
Never give up and start with whatever you have. If it's an SMS or Facebook or whatever.
Call to mom.
Yeah, call your mom. Something like that. But it is hard, especially in Norway, because it's a so regulated country. And I brought one of my bags from Morembo. That's also a company that I've started, in addition to... you should buy one for your wife.
That's the third company.
Huh?
We haven't heard about that company yet, right?
No, Morembo, it's my company, and I started it with some ladies in Kenya. Now there are about 300 ladies. And they have a job because of this. So what they do, this is made by a plant. It's called sisal and grows in dry areas. So they're making them, I'm designing them, because they were asking me if I could import what they were already doing, and I told them that no one in Norway will buy it because it looks too ugly. So I changed the design. I had to become a designer, even though that was not my dream. And I've been a designer since, and designing a lot of bags, and they've been to some of the biggest fashion magazines in Norway several times, and yeah, they're selling good.
Well done.
That was like an example, because when I was 20 years old, I had no clue on how to get these bags from a village in Kenya to Nairobi, down to Mombasa to the harbor. How can you get through the harbor? I had no clue. Or through the airplane and down to Norway. How can you pay customs? It was completely understandable, not understandable for me at all. And I had to ask people, and I had no network, you know? So, but never give up. You have to just ask questions all the time and call your mom when that is necessary.
Fantastic. What a great panel we've had here. We've learned that you should send your management team to the other side of the world to make your business thrive. The surprising thing about people is how similar we are, not how different we are. We should start with a low entry activity and funnel it and move up the ladder from there to start the movement. Was that more or less what you said? Yeah. We should let young people to the table. If you see a problem, do something about it. Use Facebook. Be concrete on what you are doing when you advertise it. Business need to find ways to integrate with society in the years to come, and start with what you have. Never give up, and go for greatness. Thank you very much.